Will your story be the same if you're writing for the page, the screen, or the stage? Not exactly. Different mediums have different strengths and limitations, and your story will need to reflect that. So, in this lesson, we're going to look at the 3 most popular mediums and how the knowledge you've learned can be applied differently to each. Let's start with the 3 mediums we're going to cover. The first is film, which we've been focusing on the most so far. The second is novels, which often go hand in hand with film. And the third is stage plays or musicals, which are becoming more known as digital versions pop up and make them more accessible. And these 3 mediums have some fundamental differences that will affect your storytelling. Let's start with film. Movies are the most flexible medium since they can jump between locations, show a huge number of characters, and can deliver information very visually. Their downside is that most times they struggle to show the inner workings of characters. In a novel, we might experience the protag's thoughts, and in a stage piece, we might listen to them monologuing or singing. But in films, we rely on the characters' expressions to inform the audience what they are thinking. For this reason, film will lean heavily into the A story. They are usually more action-driven, have clear goals, and can highlight antags using cutaways. They are also the most structured, as you can probably tell by all of our examples. However, because of their length, they need to be very efficient with their storytelling and often rely on accomplishing multiple things at once. When writing for film, you'll have an easier time if your story is very external, your B story is simple, and your goal is clear. Next is the novel. Books are also flexible, though oftentimes they are written in a certain perspective. The most common is from the protag's view, showing us their actions and thoughts. Novels can accomplish most things that film can, but they don't have the perk of showing things visually. Because of this, they struggle to show big action, like car chases or gunfights, and for this reason they are often pretty balanced between their A story and their B story. The other important note about novels is their length. They are definitely the longest medium. Where the average film is 90 minutes, the average novel will take 5 to 10 hours to read. Because of this, there is a lot more stuff you can cram in. A lot of this will be B story, as we get to see the protag's reaction and opinion of all of the story events. However, this also means novels are more likely to use subplots. But the genre of novels has a huge impact on this. YA books will typically be shorter, more structured, and more A story driven, whereas literary fiction will have a lot less action, a lot less structure, and a lot more thinking. For these reasons, you'll find it a lot easier to write a novel if your story balances the internal and external. Your protag is very reactive and opinionated, and your journey is less visually focused, like what you would see in an action movie. Finally, let's talk about stage plays. Because it's harder to jump around in time, jump between locations, or jump between characters, plays are the least flexible medium. They will usually focus on a key event and will often have almost no A story, instead spending an hour or 2 exploring a theme. For this reason, they are definitely the least structured. Because of this, there is less likely to be a clear protag with a clear goal. Most of the action will be through conversation, and if we get a glimpse into the mind of a character, it might be through a monologue directed at the audience. For these reasons, you'll find it easier to write a play if your story is very internal, your theme is strong and nuanced, and your journey is very limited. But this isn't quite the case for musicals. Musicals suffer the same limitations as plays, but often focus more on a protag achieving a goal. This is usually accomplished through an I want song near the start of the show that lays out what the protag wants. Throughout the show, the protag will often share their thoughts, worries, and desires through songs. They are more structured than plays, but less structured than films, and they are often more balanced in their A story and B story. Usually, specific moments are represented through or highlighted by songs, especially the story climax. For these reasons, you'll find it easier to write a musical if your story has a clear and simple goal, if your protag is reactive and opinionated, and obviously, if you can write music. That is the big one. But elements of story structure aren't just limited to these mediums. You can see story structure in television, online videos, comedy specials, video games, and more. So in the extended version of this section, we're going to look at some of our favorite examples so that no matter what you're working on, it can harness the superpowers of story structure. If you're not watching the extended version of this mini course, then that brings us to the end. You should now understand how universal story language can be simplified to the 3 core elements and how working backwards from an idea can help you flesh out a full-length story. You should also have an idea of how to apply these concepts to a first draft and what types of stories work best for different mediums. And in the final section of this mega course, we're going to finish things off by touching on some other concepts that are a little too complicated to cover in depth, but will still be helpful in your story structure journey.